The following is a Papi Chulo Radio original program. The views and opinions expressed in the commentaries and/or interviews in the following program are solely those of the individuals and are not views of Papi Chulo Radio, its parent, affiliate, or subsidiary companies.
Welcome to the season finale of the Silver Bells Murders, the unofficial American Gothic internet radio show, exclusively on PapiChuloRadio.com. Papi Chulo Radio, pop culture on demand. Today is Friday, September 9th, and I am your host, Mike. During tonight's broadcast, we're going to recap, review, and dissect the latest episode of CBS American Gothic. Please welcome my co-hosts to our season finale, Jess.
Hey everybody, hope you enjoyed this week's episode.
Sam Hoover.
Hello listeners, who is the SPK accomplice? We will find out very soon.
It's you.
No! Shut up!
I knew it!
Spoiler alert!
It's all your fucking amino acids.
Oh my God. And last but certainly not least, Papi Chulo.
Welcome, listeners. SBK. I have a feeling we're going to catch you before this episode is over.
Let's jump into our recap of Season 1, Episode 13, titled Whistler's Mother, in which it was aired on September 7th, 2016. Here is the official synopsis of the episode. The Silver Bells killer accomplice is revealed as they target one of the Hawthorns. Before I get everybody's initial reaction, I'll go ahead and just speak about the ratings for the season finale. It was a 0.5 in the 18 to 49 demo, and the viewers ended with 2.55 million viewers. So it stayed in a steady motion as far as starting from the beginning of the season to the end, which end on an averagely of 2.7 million viewers. So I would like to think that was pretty good. So hopefully if it will get renewed and hopefully it'll do another season. But for now, we're just going to just go with it and just talk about this season finale. So what was everyone's reaction for this final episode? I'll start with Jess. How did you feel about this ending part for the season?
Honestly, I loved it. I thought, wow, this is going to sound like a repeat from the last episode that we did, but wow, they really stepped up their game this time, and I thought that they, tied all of their loose ends up together really nicely, and I was super impressed with basically everything that they gave us. I felt like they answered all the questions I had. I wasn't left kind of wondering, like, okay, but what about this? Like, plot hole, there's a problem here. I was like, wow, American Gothic, this was fantastic. Honestly, it was.
Nice. What about you, Poppy? How did you feel about this being the final episode for the season?
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I agree 1,000% with Jess. And Jess has been a bit of like the negative Nelly this summer. So I've got to say everything that she said is spot on. I thought it was a really strong finale. I think it gave us all of the answers that we really wanted to know. It, I don't know, it was just beautifully done. I loved the surprising revelation in this episode, because I don't think any of us at all, throughout all of our predictions, predicted this. So kudos to the writers. I was really satisfied at the end of this amazing finale.
Awesome. And Sam Hoover, how did you feel about this being the final episode for the season?
I have to echo Poppy and say, like, I did not expect who it was, and I just, there were so many people in play, but it's like, and I thought at least one of us would have been partially right, but like we were all wrong, and I think the writers did that, and when we look at this episode and then we look back on it at the end, we'll say, oh, it looked kind of obvious if we're looking back in hindsight, but honestly, like, I was not prepared, so I say this was a phenomenally written episode. So just kudos, yeah, like absolutely, I'll echo that too.
I have to agree too. I feel like it ended on a really good note for the season. I definitely was surprised, especially individuals that were involved and how they ended it. I think it was really well crafted, and I think it left a really great impression on how well I think the season did. And you're right. I think if you were to go back to the season, go back from like the beginning of the season and look at each episode again, I feel like the subtle clues were there. It just so happens that we didn't put them together like little bits and pieces that you normally would find. Oh, there's nothing, really strange about it, so there's nothing to even contemplate on. But I think overall, it was a really good, strong finishing episode for the season. But before we get into a thorough recap, here are a few reminders on how you can interact with the show via social media. Follow the show on Tumblr at thesilverbellsmurders.tumblr.com. You can follow the station on social media. I mean, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, Instagram. Just find us and subscribe to us. You can even help support Papi Chulo Radio financially by visiting gofundme.com/Papi Chulo Radio. Do you have any questions, suggestions, comments, or maybe even concerns? Email us via contact at papichuloradio.com. Are you interested in joining the Papi Chulo Radio team as an on-air personality or blog contributor? Email Talon at papichuloradio.com. You can binge listen to your favorite Papi Chulo Radio programs by visiting papichuloradio.com/archives and search for the Silver Bells Murders through iTunes and hit the subscribe button. New episodes are available to download on Fridays throughout the entire summer. Okay, gang, let's go ahead and dive into the finale. Let's see if we can dissect and get our take on it. So, as we know, the episode ended with Naomi kind of looking suspicious, where she kind of closes the door, locks it for the campaign office, and kind of like what Poppy said the last time, it made it look shady for her, but who knows? So the episode kind of opens up with the individuals, the voters, already starting to vote for their candidate that they want, and we see that it's Madeline obviously voting for her daughter, and she is leaving, and we see our favorite
homegirl.
So I was waiting for somebody to come up and jump and say that. Literally, Phyllis, oh god, and we see, Phyllis is complaining about her flowers, and Madeline is just like, I'm up to here with it, I'm sorry, Phyllis, that your flowers are, destroyed or whatever, but I've received psychotic death threats, and a killer is potentially killing everybody, wants to potentially kill everybody in my family. And Phyllis kind of just like blows it off and says, maybe it probably won't be that difficult if you have that police officer asleep by the front door. And the scene then moves to us where we see the police officer asleep near the front part of the house. We see obviously Madeline is obviously not having it. And
wait, pause for a second. So Phyllis voted for Conley, right?
If I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
No, I mean she didn't say, but I mean I think it's obvious. She didn't
But-
vote for the Hawthorne Price.
the button. She has a button that says Conley on it.
Oh, okay, there
Mhm.
you go.
So we see that Malin is obviously a little upset that the police officer is asleep near the front part of her house, on the driveway, and she basically just tells the police officer that, well, you didn't notice him, so letting you know he's private security that I hired, that the money, best money that can offer, so I'd rather not be on the protection of I think she called him a narcoleptic B average cop or something like that. Pretty much really jabbing at him, and she says, I decided to go with something else, and the the police officer says, well, I'm kind of rooting for the doll maker now. I thought that was funny, but. So we kind of see that she obviously opted out for the protection of the police, and she decides to go with the private security that she's hired. And we then see into the next scene where we see Cam and Jack and Tessa are at the campaign office, and we see that it's decorated, saying vote for Allison Hawthorne and everything. And we kind of see, all of the siblings are kind of together, and I kind of just want to make a note that it kind of looks really great to see that from the start of the season, we see that the relationship Garrett had with his siblings was strained for the most part, as opposed to him being, still having that strong connection with Tessa. But here we kind of see that they're, now a little bit more open with each other. They're, communicating and, being with each other. And we notice that Allison is not there. And Jack kind of asks, well, where is she at? And Tessa says, oh, well, she's kind of busy. She's had a lot of stuff to do. And the siblings start asking, well, where is Allison? And Tessa says, oh, maybe I thought I saw her outside. And basically they start to get the realization that they have no clue where Allison is. They literally have no idea where she is at. And before I get into that, Poppy, did you feel like that Naomi might have had something to do with it, or do you feel like no way, it's, are you still sticking with what you had said previously?
Yes, 100%. It was a red herring type of situation. There was no way in hell it was Naomi. Yeah, I mean, there's no way in hell that Naomi was trying to kill her. I mean, you could tell that she genuinely cared for her and loved her. I didn't necessarily know why she returned. Like, to be quite honest, I thought it was going to be like, I love you,
I want to be with you.
I was here for you, I want to be with you, please forgive me for not telling you that I didn't go to Hawaii and all that kind of stuff. So, I wasn't buying it. Like, the whole thing of like, oh my gosh, where's Allison? Could she have, been killed by Naomi and that kind of thing? I wasn't buying it. To be quite honest, I thought they were going to be in bed together.
Yeah.
Like she wanted some extra cuddle time. She wanted to, play with each other's purse.
You are never gonna let that go.
And no,
Oh,
he's
goodness.
not at this rate.
All right.
It was cute.
Give Margaret a break.
I know, right?
Oh, so Samantha has jokes. Okay, I'll keep
I've
that in
always
mind.
had jokes since day one. Come on.
Uh-huh.
You're just the one that didn't find them funny. We did.
So we kind of see into the next scene where like, wait, what?
Sorry, I'm sorry.
The next scene where we see Tessa calls Brady and lets him know that we have no idea where Allison is at. She's not here, and she is supposed to be here. And
Yeah, she did the right thing in my
yeah,
opinion.
she totally did the right thing, saying, I literally have no idea where she's at. I need help. We need help to find, my sister, obviously. So then the Detective Cutter and Brady decide to try to figure out, okay, there's got to be some way that they can try to track her. So they track her from her last known signal from, I think it was like the last known signal that she had.
Yeah, the data
Yeah,
something.
it was the last known coordinates.
Something technical.
Yeah, based on the coordinates, and we see that it goes to like this warehouse type thing where the police kind of just barge right in, and we see Allison is sitting with Naomi and a couple of other individuals sitting in front of her, and she kind of stands up and is like, Brady, what the hell are you doing here? And we see that it kind of goes to Naomi trying to explain to Detective Cutter that, that for the past month that she's been trying to get, I think it was like aid from a union,
Correct.
from a particular union, so that way they can get like the voters and have a little bit more, I guess, easier way to make sure that Allison obviously wins the election. And
Correct, getting the union's support.
right, and Detective Cutter is like, wait, what is your social security number? Because unfortunately Naomi kind of fits the description of somebody that has ties to the family and does have somewhat access and has been with Allison. So obviously Detective Cutter kind of has to question, okay, what's your social, to run the database on her. So Allison then explains to Brady that, I decided to make this call, that I need to see if I can get union backing, and, and she kind of says, I needed to do this. And Brady says, but you have a lunatic trying to, do all this stuff to you guys, you shouldn't be doing that. And Allison says, yeah, I understand, but, she wanted to take this upon herself and try to complete out any other potential candidates that she could have backing her. And Brady explains to Allison that we figured out that the accomplice is SBK's daughter, and Allison is like, wait, you think Naomi is the accomplice? And Detective Cutter then comes in and says, nope, it's not Naomi. She's always been Naomi, never changed her name. So that's pretty much signifies for us that, nope, it can't be Naomi. Did any of you guys think that it could have been Naomi before we found out? Or no, you guys were like, no, there's no way on earth it could have been Naomi?
The way she looked at Allison at the end of the last episode, I was like, ooh, that's awful.
See,
like,
I was like, oh no, because I liked Naomi.
Me too.
So I was like,
so did
no,
I.
it can't be her. No, don't let it be her. Like, that'd be super cool, but no.
It'd be awful, actually. But honestly, like, she's been hurt by Allison, like, repeatedly over the last couple weeks. Like, I get it. So that's why, if people are really hurt by someone they truly care about, they could turn psycho in any second. And, like, we've seen that. So I didn't put it past her for a second. But then I was like, okay, yeah, it was fine. So.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same way. I mean, you couldn't put it past, but again, I was kind of like, I like Naomi. I don't want her to be like that accomplice of, oh no, don't let it be. And then when they confirmed that it wasn't her, so I was like, yes, all right. But then it dwindles down to who it could be. So I thought that was really cool that they did that throughout this episode. And when we go on to the next scene, we do see that Allison comes back to the office and says, I'm sorry for, running late. I apologize. And she's basically speaking to her supporters, and we see a special someone come in also, and it's Christina. And we see Garrett looks back and sees Christina, and he decides to go up to her, and Christina says, I got your letter, which was a letter that Garrett had wrote down that he originally wanted to give to Christina, basically explaining everything in detail on what happened. And Christina tells him, is it okay if we talk? And Garrett immediately says, yeah, of course, of course we can. And we see that once Allison finishes up her speech, we see Tessa kind of go up to Allison, and Tessa kind of voices her concerns, about that, that killer is still there. And Allison says, we're fine. We have the security here. You know, they have metal detectors and everything. And Tessa kind of brings up a really interesting point, saying, well, obviously, guns and knives are not the problem. The killer could kill us with we already established that the killer can kill us with a belt. So I thought that was a funny little like quip that she used. I personally thought that was hilarious. And we go into the next scene, which I personally thought was a really interesting conversation that these two people have. And we see that there's a knock on the door back at the Hawthorne's residence. And we see Madeline asks her security, Russo, I believe that's his name, to go ahead and open the door. And we see that it's Sophie. And you see Madeline is just in disgust, kind of rolls her eyes and is like, oh, like, what is this?
bitch.
As Jess would say, this bitch. What is this bitch doing here? And Sophie says, I know, Madeline, I know you're right there, so just tell him that I am your daughter-in-law to let me in. And they decide to discuss about some of the pictures that Cam has that are of just Jack. And Sophie pretty much asked Madeline if she can go in and take some of the pictures away, because that'd be the only type of like remembrance that she would have. And Madeline simply obliges and says okay, but she tells Russo that go ahead and follow her upstairs and make sure that that is the only thing that she takes. And we see Sophie kind of slowly walk up the stairs and passes by Madeline, says, and simply says, thank you. And I kind of got to get, Jess, your opinion on this. When Sophie showed up, did you think that it was kind of suspicious or strange that Sophie had showed up? Like, or do you feel like, oh, it makes sense given the circumstances that happened from the previous episode?
Honestly, yeah, it made sense, but also, we know that Sophie has a bone to pick, and I think especially with Madeline in particular, because, she is the one that's funding the lawyers that are taking her baby away, and she still loves Cam, and he's just like, nope, I have a pretty new nurse from rehab. Hi, Haley. Actually, no, I love that nurse, but I digress. So I think she has a bone to pick with Madeline in general, and her just showing up like that, that's trouble. Honestly, if I were Madeline, I would be like, no, you are not coming into my house. I will get those pictures for you. A lawyer will get.
Yeah, I thought Madeline would have done that. Yeah, I thought
honestly, Madeline. You're not touching my stuff. You're not breathing my air. You are disgusting. Please get away from me. I'm not saying that Madeline should have been afraid of her, but I would have been a little bit more worried because obviously Sophie has a lot of resentment, and even I would be concerned about a property damage or I know she sent the bodyguard after her, but taking something or even being blinking up sweetly at the bodyguard and being like, I know she told you to keep an eye on me, but she took away my son. I just need something. And she would just take something. And I could totally see someone falling for that and being like, well, Madeline Hawthorne's kind of a bitch. She separated her grandson from his mother. Who does that? And the security guard might have been like, all right, that's fine. That's cool. I don't care, sort of thing. So if I were in Madeline's position, there is no way that Sophie would have been getting past my house. I would have been like, yo, Hercules, do me a favor, put this trash out on
Hercules.
Hercules.
Bye, garbage princess. See ya never.
God. So we do see also that
they need to remake already American Gothic with Jess in the role of Madeline.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I feel really bad for those children now.
The wrath of Jess will be upon them, pretty much. And speaking of children, we do see that Jack kind of voices his concern in this next scene where he kind of, I wouldn't say show his sense of humanity, but he does voice his concern about not having something of remembrance towards his mother, and he explains that he kind of wants the teddy bear, back, and Cam says, you know what, I'll go ahead and get you the teddy bear. So Cam decides to leave, and we see that Garrett and Christina are like on the side of the building, and we see that Christina tells Garrett that, I'm glad that my father died for doing something that he believed in. And Garrett tells her that, when we talked on the phone, I got this idea that maybe there might be a chance for us. And Christina simply says, yeah, there definitely could be. So I thought that was really cute. I thought that was cool. And Christina says, but she explains that they can definitely give it a shot, but just not in this town, not here. And Garrett kind of takes like a quick second to think, and he says, I don't think I can leave, that with everything that's going on, I don't think I can, leave my siblings, leave my, my family. And he asks, is there any possible chance that you could stay? Is there a chance? And Christina says, no, there isn't a chance. So that itself was kind of like, so there's kind of like a dilemma, essentially. And then it kind of moves over to Brady and Detective Cutter at the graveyard, and they're standing over the graveyard of Bridget Martin, and I guess they try to see if they can maybe find some other clues as to where, or maybe any other potential leads that they could take. And Brady kind of gets this epiphany as he's staring, I guess, up into the sky, and he notices that he tells Detective Cutter that, it's interesting that if you're standing here on the grave and then you look up, you see cherry blossoms. And he starts thinking, something's kind of off, something's kind of weird. That if you're paying your respects and you're literally standing right here, the first thought that you have is the cherry blossoms that are, growing right here. And he simply just says, I know who the accomplice is. And it's like, oh Jesus, like, oh crap. And it gets really interesting because Jess's favorite character kind of makes the revelation that she is the daughter of SBK, and it is none other than Sophie. And we see that Sophie has the tattoo on her, if I'm not mistaken, like on her neck going down to like chest.
Her bosoms.
And
oh my gosh.
She says, she's telling Madeline, do you even know who my father was? And Madeline says no. And she says, he was an artist. And a very controversial one. And then it shows the flashback of all of the victims that were placed the way that SBK wanted to place them at the crime scene. And she simply says, and I helped him. And Madeline kind of just like shrugs her off and, calls for Russo. And we see Sophie says, he's not coming. And Sophie just turns around and simply just sedates her and we see that Sophie has this conniving, evilish look as Malin falls to the floor. How did you guys feel or react when Sophie is revealed as the SBK's accomplice?
I figured it out when that hand was packing the bag with the stuff. I'm like, that's Sophie. And like that's when it hit me, and I think that was what the writers had planned. It was like you can't figure it out till like you need to know, like, so like 40 minutes left of the episode, that's when you find out. And I'm just like, wow, that was really. And then, like I said in the previous podcast, looking back on every single moment that was really sketchy of hers, and I was just like, well, that's just Cam's relationship drama. It really wasn't. It was like, oh, we should have like looked into that a bit more. But I was focused on Madeline because she's still shady as crap, and she did orchestrate everything. So I was partially right, but she wasn't the accomplice, and I was a little shocked. But it makes sense, and it's like really, drugs really alter someone's psyche, and of course her backstory, which we will hear about in the coming minutes. But it just, it kind of was really shocking to me, actually.
Yeah, I thought it was surprising as well. I didn't figure it out until the cherry blossoms, to be quite honest. The hands, I thought the hands were interesting, but I wasn't really focused that much into it to have been able to have recognized whose hands they were. But with the cherry blossoms, I was like, oh, okay, cherry blossoms. I was like, okay, that's what she had. And then they had mentioned the cherry blossom tattoos, and I mean, I know what a cherry blossom tree looks like, so I was like, okay, it's freaking Sophie. Like, I would not have guessed it just because, much like what Sam said with her drug addiction and whatnot, I just thought she was a hot mess. And like, I believe I mentioned this in the previous podcast before this 2-hour finale that aired, that it just, because of her drug addiction, it just didn't seem like Sophie would be, to be quite honest, competent enough to do murders and to set them up elaborately and all that kind of stuff. But, once she sort of explains everything, it made sense, in a sense. And, so she was like right under our noses. Like, none of us figured it out, which kudos to the writers, because that means that they wrote a really good mystery, because none of us really ever suspected her. I guess we all just thought she was just this drug addict that's kind of loopy, and the drugs made her loopy. So none of us put 2 and 2 together. All of our predictions were wrong, in a sense. Like, no one that we predicted was the accomplice. No one was SBK, which is kind of funny. So kudos to the writers.
Yeah, I would say same here. I had no idea that it was Sophie. I mean, when I saw the hand, I thought it looked familiar, but I wasn't sure. And for me, it was when Brady mentioned the cherry blossoms. That's when it confirmed it for me, right? Like, I saw the hand and I thought, oh, like, it looks like Sophie's, but I'm not sure. So I wasn't entirely sure, but until Brady actually mentioned the cherry blossoms, that's when, for me, I was like, oh, okay, it's got to be Sophie. And the way that she showed herself there at the Hawthorne residence, she really did seem kind of off, and so it definitely...
Well, she always seemed off, to be quite honest. I mean, if we're going to just speak honestly about the character, she was always kind of off.
Not necessarily all the time off. Like, this one, I personally felt like this one was a little bit more, just the way...
She was a little bit more nutsy cuckoo?
Well, yeah, because of the way that her body language presented herself as she simply just asked Malin to get the photos. I personally thought that was a little odd at first, especially when she slowly walked to Malin and just simply said thank you. I would imagine she would have ignored her completely instead of making sure that Malin is aware of her saying thank you. I thought that was also strange too. But overall, like how you had mentioned, really great job on how the writers went about this. I thought it was really well crafted. I, again, had no idea it was her. But moving on, we see that Madeline's a little distraught, and she wakes up and she's tied up to the chair in the living room, and she's telling Sophie, please, don't do this. And we see Sophie kind of like just look at her like, oh, you really think I'm going to listen to you? Like, no, this, it's not going to happen. And Sophie kind of mentions that, my father was, the only person I had left, and it kind of flashes back to a scene where the psychiatrist that was originally supposed to evaluate Jack a couple episodes ago, we see Sophie had answered about her parents, and she says that her mother had died when she was 10. So that was like a little miniature, like, that was a partial clue in the season that could have been used to further evaluate as Sophie as a potential accomplice. But again, I personally didn't pick up on it, but I thought that was really cool that the writers kind of went back in previous episodes to showcase how certain things tied up to what led up to here right now. And she simply says that, I lost her, that she goes and tries to tell Madeline, like, do you even understand how that loss feels like, that your insides are ripped open or ripped apart and shredded? And she says that, that was exactly how it was like for me and my dad. I feel like she gave this really weird explanation that her father was taken away, even though her father was this serial killer. So I personally thought that was really interesting how Sophie's approach, how she decided to put her take on it. And Sophie explains that her mother was in an accident, that she had been in the hospital for a couple weeks, if I'm not mistaken. And she's telling Madeline that, that she was there and that they hardly ever checked on her, that she was completely out of it, and that her mother was disoriented, and they never really did anything, that they never did any type of special test, or they didn't actually go in and do an actual diagnosis of her mother. And she's explaining to Madeline that they had said that it was just side effects that her mother was suffering from. And you can see that Sophie is reminiscing of what happened to her mother. When Sophie's giving this explanation, how did you guys feel Sophie's approach on her explanation? Do you guys feel like this is what a psychotic person or drugged up person would speak like, or do you guys feel like she was actually coherent and eloquent in her speech? How did you guys feel her approach was? Anybody can jump in.
I think for being an addict, I think it was pretty coherent for sure. So her brain is obviously fried because of, I don't know how long she's been using, but long enough, to have a kid and for him to be affected. So for her to be able to go through every memory and every reason as to what led her to this moment in her life where she's continuing her father's legacy, it was just okay, that makes a lot of sense. And they flash back to the appropriate times and when she was speaking, which was great. But yeah, I think she did a good job of setting the scene, and I think it scared Madeline even more, which, fair enough. So I think she did a wonderful job of what she set out to do when she was speaking about that.
I really like the part in the scene where Madeline's you went with your father to commit murder? He actually took you out for that? And Sophie's you're not exactly a great example of parenting either. And Madeline just gives her this look at least I never took my children to commit murder. But then she gets like that little...
I just took my husband.
She gets that little look on her face like, oh, wait. Fuck!
I agree. I thought that was really great that she kind of poked fun of how they both poke fun of each other, like their parenting skills aren't the best. And that's when Sophie explains that I think it was mostly her father who plotted out a list of individuals who they wanted to carry out their mission, especially to those that contributed to the rich donors who helped actually build the hospital itself. And then we see that in the flashback, we see it says Mitchell, Hawthorne, and family. I think it was like for like, was it a million? I honestly do not remember. I could have sworn it's at like $1 million, but we see that both Sophie, younger Sophie, and her father kind of just stare into the like that palette thing that that describes each individual and how much the donations were. And Sophie then begins to explain that we borrowed a car from the family friend, and then the scene goes back to the blind lady. So that was crazy. And again, it leads to it leads to when Brady and Detective Cutter found out about the car. So I thought that was really cool that they tied that in. And then that's when Sophie had said, that's when I would, break into lavish mansions and stuff, and I was pretty good at it. And then it kind of flashes back to an earlier episode where Sophie is seen downstairs by the front door with Cam, and Cam's like, holy shit, like, how did you even get in here? Like, how, what? Like, there's no way. And again, it alludes to little bits and pieces of clues that Sophie provided for us that they were completely subtle and we didn't notice. And you guys had mentioned it right now too, that's when Madison, that's Madison.
Margaret.
I said Madison, chill out. When Madeline mentioned, that's, your father would take you to, commit these, murders, these crimes. And Sophie just kind of looks at her and says, you can't be the one to judge on parenting skills at all either. And she explains that on that night, he would tell her that he would go in first, and she would wait in the car. And we see a flashback of Sophie listening to her father, and her father tells her that, wait for my signal and then come in. And Sophie, looks at him and says, okay, I understand. And Sophie would then explain that when it was done, she would go ahead and hear the signal, and she would come in and help clean up and set up the scene, putting the body there all tied up and everything, and then finally place the bell right near the victim. And we see that Sophie kind of pulls out a silver bell, which I thought was kind of interesting because, as we all know, we thought the bells were all disposed of. So I thought that was really cool that the writers did that they kind of just showed that a bell still existed, even though all or most of the bells were disposed of by Allison. And we see that Sophie explains that we would put that the bell was placed there as of a way for cry for help, but that it was just out of arm's reach. So I thought that was really poetic. I don't know how you guys felt about it, but I thought that was actually really cool. Creepy, but cool that was the reasoning a bell was placed next to victims. What did you guys think of that?
Yeah, I thought it was neat. I didn't think their justification as to who they were killing was really all there and all that logical. Like, they were killing the donors to the hospital. I mean, not that I'm trying to tell killers who to kill, but it would make more sense for them to kill, like, the people that actually worked at the hospital, I would guess, because those are the people that gave them the bad service.
Well, I mean, to be fair, if a donor really does provide that much equity into a particular organization or company, they do have some sort of a say as to how or what funds can be distributed into certain supplies and certain things like that. So on that note, but I do agree that it seems kind of odd that their focus was solely the donors and not the actual employees.
Yeah, they didn't watch Saw. They didn't watch the Saw franchise. They would have gotten maybe better tips.
Apparently not. So I mean, that's the way that I see. And Sophie says that, the bell was placed there in arm's reach, just out of arm's reach, and that's how it was like for us, for me, and for my father.
Mm-hmm.
So she tries to make this comparison, and we see that Malin is... Now we see that she's scared. We do see this, this frightened woman now, and she says, "Oh my god, like, what do you want? Like, I'll give you anything." And Sophie tells her, shut up, don't talk. My father came into this house and never left. Which, by the way, I wanted to kind of like slap Sophie and tell her, no, because your father wanted to commit murder. You're stupid, and no, like, that's not even a legit reason. But I guess for my own sanity, I guess I'll just listen to what you have to say, because she simply says, my father was here and he never left, and that she says, I waited for the cops to find me or to hear my father's name in the news, but I didn't hear anything. He never appeared. And she says, because you never called the cops. You decided to use my father, like his name, his signature, everything about him, to get revenge and to get rid of your own enemies. And the way I saw it was that I kind of felt just a little suspicious how Sophie knew about all of this information. I don't know about you guys, but I felt a little curious, and I felt a little like, wait a minute, how did she know about her father being used, that it was somebody within the family, that it was her, that her and her husband were using that? I guess I felt a little like strange about it, because
your spidey senses were tingling.
They were, because I kind of felt like, wait, how did she know about all of this information? Because only somebody within the family had to have known. I mean, only Allison, Tessa, Garrett, and Cam were the only people that could have, known, at least from what I'm aware of. So I thought that was strange. I don't know, Poppy, you kind of agree, right?
Yeah, I thought it was really fishy. I was like, she knows a little bit too much, especially for being someone who's been on the outs with the family for a little while.
I thought, wait a minute, how could she have picked up on so much stuff? Like, don't get me wrong, like, if she figured this out on her own, like, kudos to her, because that's pretty difficult to do, but there has to be some other way that she found out. And that's when Sophie explains that, that's when I became an orphan, that I got taken in... that I got taken in by the same family friend that took me in. And she simply says, I didn't want to kill her, and we see that Sophie's super sad, and we see that, she's, a little upset about it, that, that she feels bad that she had to kill her, but she felt that if the cops were closing in, she felt that she had to get rid of her before she would actually spill out who she was. That the family friend, the blind woman, would have slipped up and she would have mentioned her name. And And Sophie looks at Madeline and she's upset and says, and that's why I try to make it quick, and that way she didn't have to suffer. I guess showing how much anger she still has towards Madeline. And Madeline just simply says, I can give you money, I can give you whatever you want. And she says, let me help you. You need money, I can give you money, I can give you, lots of money. And Sophie says, you know what, just stop talking, just be quiet, don't say anything. And she's pulling out the belt and she covers Madeline's mouth, because we see Cam come in and he has headphones. Of all the times he has to have fucking his headphones, and just lets Madeline know that he wants to pick up something for Jack. And we see that Cam goes upstairs and he's, searching for the bear, and he notices the bear's on top of the desk or whatever, and he pulls it away from the desk, and he turns around, he sees Sophie.
Phyllis!
Oh my god, Phyllis. Screw Phyllis. And he sees...
I know you want to.
Ugh. And we see that he sees Sophie, and he's like, oh my god, what are you doing here? And we see that Sophie pretty much says, I wish this didn't have to come to this, and she literally just pushes Cam on the floor, and we see Russo appearing lifeless next to Cam, and Cam is like, oh my god, who is that? What? And Cam is completely distraught and is like, what is going on? What are you doing? And he's like, why are you handcuffing me to him? What? Why? And Sophie says, I have to finish. And she says, I have to finish what my father started. And Cam then gets the little light bulb in his head and says, oh my god, it was you. And Sophie explains that you were just supposed to be a way to get into the family. And then it goes back to a cutscene from the past of when Cam explained about a woman that he would see in different places, like at the coffee shop, at the movies, and whatever. And Allison says that, oh, and let me guess, she just popped up right in front of you, and she said that, hi, I'm Sophie, and I'm going to be your girlfriend. And I don't know about you guys, but I thought, oh my god, that is crazy that, again, all of these stuff are actually coming together. I don't know. What did you think, Samantha?
She was really dead set on ruining his life, and it just really makes me mad. I don't know if Jack was in the plan at this point, hearing that, and I was like, well, she said, oh, this was just supposed to be this, and then, we also saw them having a little bit of fun together as a family, I think, too, in the flashbacks, in that same instance. Yeah. So I was just like, okay, you have feelings for him, so it's deeper than that, even though you originally intended to just tear some shit up, but yeah, so I think she was conflicted at that point saying that, but I'm not putting anything past her anymore. I was trying so hard, as you guys know, to give her the benefit of the doubt, to at least the very least that I could do, because I still kind of did suspect something was wrong there, and obviously, yeah, more than just drugs, but I didn't want to accuse her because I didn't know, what I know now. So I think that was really bad of her. You're messing with other people's lives. It's not just Cam. It's you're trying to ruin an entire family. Yeah, they're prestigious and they're rich, and but what does that have to do with I don't know much about the Hawthorns outside of what we've been shown, but I don't think they're really besides the killing, I don't think they've done anything else wrong. I don't know. Is it just because they're rich? I don't know. Is it just bringing down the 1%? Is that what she's? Because I know her motive. I get that, but I don't know. It's hurting innocent people regardless of status. It just doesn't make sense, and she shouldn't have done it. But you know what? Father like daughter, you gotta obey your parents when you're younger, and then she got her own vendetta. So that's how I feel. Those are my feelings on that.
And it's crazy because she did mention that, that they created a very unique child and that they did have good times, and that her being with him kind of extinguished her revenge, that it put away her wanting to get revenge. And she makes the notion that, well, after you said that I could not be a part of it, then I thought, well, the only thing I have left is the revenge. So essentially, if Cam was still with Sophie, this more than likely would have not happened, but who knows? Because she did state that now she feels like that she doesn't have anything, that this is the only thing that she has. And she simply just leaves him be and kind of goes back downstairs. And the next scene kind of pushes forward to where Brady is calling Tessa. By any chance, do you know if Sophie is there, or do you know where she's at? And she says, no, I don't know where she's at, and she's not even here. And Brady just simply tells her that she is SBK's daughter, that she is the accomplice. And Tessa is at first doesn't believe it, and she says, no, there's no way that it can be. I mean, I'm here with Garrett, with, guards, Allison, whatever. And she says, wait, Cam went back to the house to go get something for Jack. And that's when she says, that he's been gone for a while and that her mother is there too. And that's when Tessa, I believe, tells Garrett, this pretty much that Sophie is the accomplice. And Garrett says, I'll handle it, I'll go. So Garrett decides to leave, and Madeline calls, and then the scene moves over to Madeline calling out for Cam to make sure that he is all right. And that's when Madeline tells Sophie that, what, if I will retract everything for you and Jack, I will. Basically, she explains that she's willing to call right now to make sure that she gets the visitation, supervise everything she wants in order to see her son. And we kind of see that, at least what it looks like, that Sophie is actually, listening to Madeline. And Madeline says, I can tell them that Jack needs you in his life. I can tell the judge, I can shared custody, supervised visits, I can tell them exactly what you want me to tell them. And Sophie says, you're willing to do that? And Madeline says, yes, I am willing to do that. And it looks like Sophie's somewhat listening, but then she kind of gives like the semi Stewie neck twitch, like move, whatever, like where she smiles and says, yeah, right, it's not gonna happen. And we see her slowly get the belt, and she's kind of wraps it around her hand, and moves on over to Cam, trying to pull the body out from the stairs because he's handcuffed to Russo. Well, dead Russo, and we see that he uses him as a slide, as a board to go.
Oh, that was spectacular.
That was horrible, but yeah,
that was amazing.
That was the only way he can get down the stairs. So kudos to him. Oh my god, you people are so bad. And it was the only way that he could get down this.
It was like a sled.
Oh my god.
It was like Christmas.
And he uses him as a way to get down the stairs, which is, I'll admit, it was pretty smart. And we see that during that time, we see that Sophie is putting the belt over Madeline and suffocating her. And that's when Cam pulls out the gun from the side of Russo's pants, and he pulls out the gun, and he goes over and points the gun at Sophie, and Sophie just simply says, "You're too late. It's done." And we see that Cam is distraught and like holy crap, and we see Madeline is just sitting there with her lifeless body there on the chair. When that happens, how did you guys feel? What was y'all's reaction?
I was kind of like, I felt sick because I was just like, okay, this is kind of what I wanted the whole series, but then she is actually dead, and I was just like, well, maybe not. I don't know. Like, that was a weird feeling for me. It was just kind of sad to see her body there, like, her like laying there or sitting there or whatever like that. I was like, that's kind of depressing. And although she was a complete bitch the entire time, she deserved a better end than that, you know? So that's
Sure.
how I
thought it was a little bit of karma, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I kind of felt that it was karma.
Yeah, she took up the moniker, for lack of a better word, because she was getting rid of people posing as SBK. I think it was kind of appropriate and almost poetic that she actually got killed by the real SBK accomplice.
I agree. I thought that she was faking it actually for the first little bit because my mom watches it with me and she's like, oh, she's dead. And I was like, that bitch isn't dead. Satan doesn't die.
Hey, that's what I thought too.
And then she was dead. So,
Can I
yes,
say
she wasn't Satan. That was actually Jack.
Can I say that my mom was like, so there's gonna be a twist at the end. She's gonna move in that coroner's bag, and I was like, Mom, like,
Oh my god.
I actually wanted that to happen after she said it. I was like, whoa. Maybe. Well, maybe we'll see that some other day.
Well, you know what's interesting though, is that it makes complete sense as to why Jack is the way he is. He has it from his maternal grandfather and his paternal grandmother. So it's just
and his
that
mom,
that
she's creepy too.
well, yeah, that as well. But like at least in the grandparents, like he has an actual grandfather and a grandmother that both were serial killers, and obviously the mother is as well. And then you mix in all the drugs from both parents. Like no wonder he's the way he is.
And when we move on a little bit further, we do see that Cam has this struggle of wanting to pull the trigger, and we see that he's definitely struggling whether to pull the trigger on Sophie or not.
Pull the trigger,
And
man.
Garrett explains to Cam that you can't, you don't want to do this. You don't want
Pull the
to
trigger, man.
be what I did, where I had to kill somebody, and you have the option where you don't have to go through this.
Stop being a purse. Pull the trigger.
And he simply tells Cam that if you do pull the trigger, what's going to happen to Jack? That you'll go to jail. You won't. He won't be in your life or anything like that.
He won't go to jail. It's self-defense. Pull the trigger.
Well, you never know. You'd be surprised how interesting the court system can.
It's self-defense.
Doesn't matter.
Hire the legal lady that knows her shit, and she'll get you off.
Yeah, you're still rich. You can still hire a lawyer and make sure that none of this was your fault.
That is not the
Your mom,
point.
and I know
And
your
he
mom
has-
is a bitch,
And he
but
has white privilege.
Oh my god, that is not the
Sophie
point.
not white?
Yeah, that is not the point. The
Pull the
point
trigger.
is Greer didn't want Cam to go through with that, and Cam actually
Did you call him
does-
Greer?
No,
Whatever, shoot that bitch.
Shoot her.
Doesn't matter what her name is. Shoot her.
And Cam decides to pull the trigger, but Garrett moves him out of the way. Before
Garrett, you're such a
Sophie-
purse.
Before Cam can actually shoot Sophie, and we see Sophie escapes through the window.
Yes, because she's
And-
fucking Houdini.
Yeah, I do think that was kind of odd, but
Yeah,
That's-
what the fuck was that?
She's like from
Yeah.
Cirque du Soleil now, I guess.
we do move on to the next scene where we see that Allison does win the election and becomes
Yay!
the first female
Suck it,
mayor
Phyllis.
of Boston. And we see everybody's clapping and cheering and everything, and we see Tessa got a phone call, and we see that she's crying and she feels sad and everything from the news that she got about her mother. And you could tell she gives this sad facial expression to Allison, and Allison goes straight from being happy to a somber, sad face, and we do see that the siblings all meet up at the residence, and we see that Madeline's body is being taken away, and we see that the siblings kind of gather around and watch as their mother gets taken away from the house, and we see all four siblings are staring at the police van that has their mother's body.
Yeah.
And we see that
Phyllis did a little jig.
Oh my god. And we do see that they're kind of, sad and upset and everything, and it just ends on this really, sad look and everything, and we kind of just see that Brady kind of just goes through the files and is just in shock, I guess, out of everything because it happened to his family. And he says, how did we miss it? I had known her for years and I never even caught it. And Detective Cutter makes the point that, nobody ever sees her family very, very clearly. But now that we know who it is, the next time that she shows her face, we will be ready, that we'll get her, if she shows her face in public. And, it's all thanks to you. And she makes the point that this crime, this mystery has, never been able to been solved for more than 16, 17 years. And yet your persistence and your drive to find the truth, really help shape to find out who it was. And Brady kind of just tells you, thank you, and he kind of pulls out the drive from his desk and gives it to Cutter and says, this is the conversation between you and Conley, and this is the only one that's there. And Cutter says, you could hold this, over my head forever if you wanted to. And Brady says, why would I want to do that to my partner?
Aww.
So it really does show that
they're gonna make
does
love.
Care. Wow, that he really does care. That he does, that he's not this conniving person.
Yes, Brady for MVP. Yeah.
That Brady is a nice dude, and we do see that it then moves on to this next scene where we see all of the siblings are sitting in the, I guess you could say, like, lobby area of the police station, and they're kind of explaining, and Cam is like, great, Jack's grandfather is SBK, and, well, this is just wonderful. And Garrett says, yeah, but he has you, and, he's going to be fine, and he has us, so don't even worry about it. He's going to be good to go. And Tessa asks Garrett, wait, are you staying around? Like, why? Like, you have Christina, why are you going to stay here and go to San Francisco? And Garrett says, I can't leave you guys. I can't do that. And it really, again, it really does showcase that their relationship with each other now has, under the shitty circumstances that happened, it did get better. And Garrett says, well, and they wouldn't even let me out of the state anyway. And Allison says, they would if the mayor were to talk to the probation officer. So, you do see, they're in much better terms than they were at the beginning of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really, really cool that, they're come together. And then it gets even interesting, I think. And it says 1 year later, we see that it opens up with some food being spilled over, and it was Tessa's baby that kind of spilled over the bowl, whatever. And we see Tessa and Brady with the cute little baby that's there, and we see Tessa's on the phone is on the phone and basically says, did the flight come in on time? So I'm assuming she's talking to Garrett. And she says, I can't wait. And then it moves over to Cam saying, okay, awesome, I can't wait. We'll be there. And then we see our favorite nurse, assistant, however you want to call her, tell Cam that, oh, look, it's 12, it's on the dot, it's officially been a year. And because they had originally said a couple episodes ago that, they can't really do patient, nurse type relationship, they have to wait about a year, 12 months, so in case of a relapse or whatever. And we see that they definitely engage in adult things that most of us do. And
Oh my. Except for Sam Hoover.
Okay,
Ooh.
cut that out.
hey.
Hey.
And we do see that it does move over to the siblings all meeting up at the beach, and we see that everybody looks like they're having a great time. We see Jack, we see Tessa, we see Allison and Naomi together with the two kids. I thought that was really cool.
Let's be honest.
See Allison and Naomi are looking happier than ever, and we see later on, we see that Garrett and Christina are coming by with the kid, and
Tom is
and
with
the
Jess now.
music. We see that everybody is now super happy. We see, people, when Garrett comes by, he's, all smiles, and he looks just like a happier person, and he's smiling, gives a hug to Cam, and he's giving a hug to Tessa, but we notice that him and Tessa give this longer hug, kind of like this brotherly, this bond of sibling love, knowing that some of the hardships that they specifically went through that was designated towards them. And we just see that then it moves over to Jack kind of looking off in the distance, and he has that weird face like of disgust or something. I don't know, his face is he's just an all-around weird kid. And we see that he picks up the bear and he kind of moves away from the beach spot that they're at, and he kind of looks at the bear, and he presses on the arm of the bear, and it's Sophie's voice, and it says, "Don't worry, you'll see me again soon." And Jack kind of just looks off into the distance, and he's kind of like upset or crying or something, because he does look like he's visibly upset, and he just simply says, when? And we kind of hear like the eerie music in the background or something like that. But then it kind of moves over to Allison having like an interview with the TV reporter, and the TV reporter just basically asks, what was your secret? After a year in office, you're doing so well. What's the secret behind your success for being, staying strong? And Allison just says, the devil's in the details, and I'm thorough to a fault. And then it decides to go back to cutscenes from the episode, and it was showing that Allison was sitting in Sophie's house, and she was sitting in the couch because she originally wanted to tell Cam and Tessa everything about what she found out, but they left to go find Jack and Sophie at the aquarium. But then it moves over to the next scene where originally Allison was brought in for questioning during the time that she wanted to tell Brady that she thinks that during that time she thought it was Detective Cutter as the individual. That was during that episode. I don't know what specific episode it was, but it was that many episodes ago. And she notices that in a particular picture there was a wallpaper. I don't remember the design, but the design was very familiar. And she also noticed that it was very similar to, I think it was like a flower like wallpaper or something, where it was similar to Sophie's. And then it goes to a different scene where we didn't see during the episode, where Allison meets up with Sophie, and she flat out tells her, "You are the accomplice. I know." And I thought, oh my god, like that was crazy. I don't know how you guys felt, but I thought, holy crap, like she figured it out before everybody who it was. And she says that she tells Sophie that, "I know it's you because of the wallpaper of your self-portraits. They're identical. And it's from the blind lady's house." And she simply says, "You must have known her very well enough, knowing that you were going to get her to cover up for you, and being able to," and she explains about the funeral as well. So I don't know, like, how did you guys feel knowing that Allison was starting to piece up together and she flat out just confronted Sophie just like that? Like, what did you guys think?
And asked her to kill her mom? Yeah.
How did you guys feel? Like, she basically just flat out said, she basically tells her that it all adds up, it all leads to you, and she simply says that, you don't necessarily need to get rid of everyone, you just need to get rid of my mother.
I think that was smart.
Right?
She was the one that was to blame for everything, and I just feel like that was the most devious thing, and I loved it because it was just like, yeah, that's what she deserved. I know, like I said earlier, it was kind of like maybe she deserved a bit of a better death, because obviously, yeah, she was gonna get killed either way because she had it coming, honestly. But yeah, I think that was pretty smart that they teamed up and were like, yeah, okay, let's do this.
It was crazy, right? And then
and it's interesting how Allison basically has turned into her mother.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
And then it gets even more interesting when it shows that she removed one of the silver bells from the box and throws the rest of them into the water. And she says, I know what happened when your father came in, which explains how Sophie was able to get all of that information and reveal it to Madeline, since Sophie didn't have that pre-existing information to begin with. And Allison tells her that, "I can go to the police and you go away to jail for a very long time." And she says, "You don't need to target all of us. You just need to target my mother. She orchestrated everything. She did everything, the cover up, killing David Morales." And she's like, "I know you want revenge." And Sophie says, "You just want to remove the liability so that way you can protect the rest of your family," which is kind of like synonymous to what Madeline would do. Basically get rid of a liability so that way her family is intact. And Allison says, "So you see the benefits of this, you see the elegance in this." And we see Sophie kind of look at the bell, look at Allison, and basically tells her that, "You know what, I'll go ahead and do it," which is synonymous to that same scene where we see the trunk open. If I'm not mistaken, it looks like it was the same area because the trunk was open and we see Sophie's hand with the rope and the bell and everything, which reveals that was when they met. That was during that time. And the reporter had asked Allison, "Your mother's killer is still out there, how do you cope with that?" And Allison says, "I learned from my mother that, you can either choose to live in fear or you can move forward," basically quoting back what her mother had told her so many episodes ago. And that you can either let these actions dictate how you want to move forward, or you can summon the strength within you to move forward. And Allison says, "Our family is thriving and moving forward." And she simply says, "I think my mother would be proud." And the season ends there, which I thought was crazy. So with that being said, if you guys had to rate the episode, what we're going to do first is we'll rate the episode and then we'll grade the season. So go ahead and rate the episode and then grade the season right after. So Jess, if you had to rate the specific episode, what would you give it from 1 to 10 silver bells? And then from there, how would you grade the season from an F to an A? Pluses and minuses are definitely allowed.
Okay. For this specific episode, I would give it 9 silver bells. I really did enjoy it. I thought they made the most of what they had, the foundation that they set up. I really enjoyed the twist. And for me, I think the overall grade would be... Ooh. Okay. I'm going to give it a B+, but it's a very strong B+. And for me, like, I've been consistently giving the show some pretty low ratings on past episodes, but what I really liked and what really hit home, as you just mentioned, Allison turned into her mother, and so that last line, like, I think my mother would be proud of me, it really kind of brought this theme that has been there from the beginning of, you know, are we made a certain way or are we born a certain way? And so Jack is obviously like the product of his screwed up grandparents, and Allison actually, and I love it because she actually looks the most like her mother, sounds the most like her mother. She became Madeline. Madeline became her own mother. And so you have to wonder if the cycle will continue with this family down the line. Like, will they just keep fucking up generations of people? Like, what's going to happen for them, basically? Like, we saw them all happy on the beach, but that's not going to last. Like, other than Jack, obviously, because we know he's going to grow up to be a serial killer. What other issues are these kids going to face? Like, are Allison's twins going to become her? I mean, I doubt it because they're both really stupid, but what if they did? Like, you know, I just thought it was really interesting that they kind of brought that. Well, they were kind of dumb. Sorry. They were cute, but they were dumb. But I just thought it was really interesting how they brought that theme of, like, everything coming full circle and, like, who you are. Is that dictated by nature or nurture? That aspect was really well done and really well thought out. And so I think that was actually my favorite part of the series, which is why I think, in my opinion, given, you know, the low ratings I've given it before, that I actually would give it a solid B. Solid B.
Okay. Sam, if you had to rate the episode first from 1 to 10 silver bells, what would you give it? And then what grade for the season would you give it?
I'm going to say 10. That's like,
Oh,
I know it might be shocking. No, like, I think this is exactly the finale I was looking for. Like, I knew they were going to, you know, start slow and then they just kind of threw everything at us at once. And then even more than I had expected. So that was like a thing for me. As well as, yeah, like even Allison at the very end, like, yeah, that was a twist for me. Allison did become her mother. And I always pointed this out, but they always echoed each other's actions. And I was like, I wonder if this is going to be important. I didn't really pay much attention to it because I'm like, well, they are related and that's her mom. So yeah, they're going to act, you know, similar, but like not exactly the same. Like, that's crazy. And I definitely think that they set it up well for a season 2. Like, there's so many questions that have been answered, but there's many more that, you know, have been posed as the season ended. And I was just like, you know, Poppy originally said this is probably just a one and done type, like, you know, this is the only season we're going to get. But I don't know. I think it depends on the fans and it depends on, you know, the writers. But I really hope and pray that they do bring this back because I'm not done. I can't just like pull out of this series. Like, I'm so invested now and I want to know what happens. And it just pulled everything together perfectly. So yeah, that's why I would give it a 10. And I think, sort of to echo Jess, I think maybe B+ would be my grade. Like, it's, you know, it's A grade, but, you know, there were some things where I remember in certain episodes where I could have used more context or, you know, sometimes less. But that's just, first season is like the setting the stage of whatever show you're portraying to the viewer. So like, this was a good scene setter. So I think B+ is an inappropriate grade.
Okay. And Poppy, what would you rate the episode from 1 to 10 silver bells? And from there, what grade for the season would you give it?
I grade this episode 10 silver bells. I thought it was the finale that I wanted, much like what Sam said as far as the finale that she wanted. I thought it was a really great and very strong season finale. I feel like all of our questions were answered. I feel like them showing sort of flashbacks to the past and to episodes that we've seen to sort of explain exactly, you know, what was going on and putting things into the right context. Like, everything made sense, and I thought it was beautifully done. The show has always had great cinematography and really great camera angles, and it's just, everything has been perfect about the show, even the musical cues. So the finale was a really strong season finale, so I have to give it 10 silver bells. So I kept 10 from the box that Allison threw away. And as far as the grade for the season, I'm going to go with, in particular because I don't think I ever really gave it that low of a grade, or I should say that low of a silver bell rating, I'm going to give it a solid A. I give it an A for the season. I thought it was a really strong series. I wasn't disappointed at all throughout the season. I felt like each episode was pretty strong, and it really built upon the previous episode. Each episode got stronger and stronger. I know there were a couple of episodes that I gave a solid 10 silver bells. So for me, I thought it was a really strong series. The acting was good. The surprises and the twists were really well done. Some of the cliffhangers were a little wonky, but I get why they did it, because, you know, they had to put the red herrings in there for all the people to go, oh my gosh, did that really happen? So overall, for the season, I give it an A. They did a really great job. Kudos to the writers for making a twisty and surprising summer series.
Nice. I think for me, if I had to rate it from 1 to 10 silver bells, I probably would give it I have to give it a 10. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I think it was great, and especially the little twist at the end I think was awesome. I felt like it definitely answered everything. At least for me, it answered all of the questions that I had, and it really did provide the reasoning, like, I would say legit reasons why Sophie did it. And I feel like overall, the season itself, if I had to grade it, I probably would give it an A minus. A minus, close to an A. I think I don't remember ever giving it a low grade to begin with on any of the episodes, but I think overall I really enjoyed it. I think it was a great season. I feel like I think it would have been a little more interesting if maybe one more additional individual was killed or removed, but I think it really did satisfy my intentions or what I was expecting from this show. I think overall it was just a really solid show. So I would definitely say kudos to the writers. But on that note, we would like to thank our listeners for joining us these past 13 episodes. You can visit poppychuloradio.com/archives to download this episode and many more. Registered users will gain access to our archives of previously aired broadcasts. You can also download tonight's broadcast through iTunes. Just search for The Silver Bells Murders and subscribe. Please like Poppy Chulo Radio on Facebook by going to facebook.com/poppychuloradio. You can help support Poppy Chulo Radio financially by visiting gofundme.com/poppychuloradio. Email us via contact@poppychuloradio.com with any questions, suggestions, comments, or even concerns. Are you interested in joining the Poppy Chulo Radio team as an on-air personality or blog contributor? Email talon@poppychuloradio.com. Co-hosts, for the final time this season, please wish our listeners a happy good night.
Good night, listeners. Thanks for joining us on this journey. SBK, we know who you are, and we're watching out for you.
Good night, listeners. Like Poppy said, thank you for coming on this wonderful adventure with us and catching the killer.
Good night, everybody. Hope you have a wonderful... Oh, my goodness. Sorry. sorry. Something hit my window. I don't know.
It was
what
caramel.
Jesus Christ.
It was
it?
Sophie.
Okay, no, stop it. I'm alone.
We love you, Phyllis.
Okay, let me try that again. Good night, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Silver Bells Murders, everyone. Have a great night.